Well, yeah, the film started off as an action adventure film for young people, which is what the novel was. So because the writer had spent time in Brazil, but also in India and the Philippines, I went to Brazil first, not knowing whether I was going to make the film, and spent a lot of time in different communities there, working with different young people, just trying to understand whether the story could be told or whether there was a context in which it could be told, and indeed whether you could ever find kids to work with. The advantage of going to Brazil was that Fernando Meirelles was a friend, and he had a very well-oiled machine in terms of working with non-professionals out of the different communities. So once I'd gone there and started working with the different communities, in the communities with the young people, it felt such a sort of a breath of fresh air, something so unusual for me and so different in terms of working with non-professionals and other cultures I've worked with, that I stayed there basically and carried on making the film. Well, I really wanted to make a film that was very different to all the other films I made. So, and I wanted to make a film that was about a sort of, for want of a better way of describing it, had some elements of action adventure. In the end, I think there's still elements of action adventure in it, but I think that it's much more a film about friendship and faith and perseverance and justice in a sense. But all that really came out of conversations and workshops and a long period of working with the young people in the film. They brought all that to the film. There is a sense, and I don't mean to be, well, there's a sense to me that there's a cliche about people that that live in those communities and work in those communities, that somehow they are, for want of a better way of describing it, they don't have a very strong moral sense, but in fact I found quite the reverse, a very strong moral sense of themselves, a very strong sense of justice, a very strong sense of wanting to change things. So all that really came from the kids, and we wanted to put that in the film because the kids were so adamant about it. And of course the kids all personally suffered from police corruption and have many different stories to tell about their own families of people who've been killed or imprisoned by the police there. So their anger was very present and they wanted that expressed very cogently and coherently within the film. Well, Gramacho is, which is a landfill site just outside Rio, is the largest landfill site in South America. And that just shut. When we were sort of thinking about the film and researching it, we'd spent a lot of time on Gramacho, and then they shut it. Partly because of the World Cup coming up and who wants a landfill site so close to the city. We needed to find a landfill site of our own. We built ours mostly because the sort of more illegal dumps that we could have used are so. You can visit them for a few hours, but the idea of spending months on them would be so dangerous in terms of the hygiene elements, and not just hygiene, I mean, it's full of hospital waste. So we decided to build our own dump, and of course we had to burn it down, so we couldn't use real people's houses. So yes, the production designer, we found a site, which in the end was actually okay, but a little bit dangerous because of the different militias in the area. But we did build our own landfill site for the kids to work on safely. And then working with Adriano was, of course, a great joy. He's one of the great Brazilian cinematographers, now one of the great world cinematographers. And we knew we wanted to approach this in a very different way to the sort of cinema novo, sort of social, realistic way of shooting things. It is a fable. It's a sort of fantasy film in a sense. So trying to find a different way of mashing up different genres from sort of social realism to fantasy to magic realism, and just to try to find a new genre if we could out of all the different genres that are shot so well. And corruption in Brazil is very well documented in films. Those issues of social justice are very well documented. So we didn't want to repeat that. We wanted to try to find something new. Well, I enjoy both working. I mean, films take about 2 years to make, and theatre doesn't take that long to make. I love making the theatre because it's where I come from and it's very much my home territory. Cinema is always a great adventure. The great thing I love about cinema is, whether it's like on the Reader spending 2 years in Germany making that film, or spending nearly 2 years in Brazil making this film. It does take you on vastly different cultural journeys into areas of society and knowledge that you just have, that are discovery journeys. So that's the great joy of cinema. Well, each part has its own joys. There's a great joy in pre-production, there's a great joy in shooting the film, and a great joy in editing the film. All three processes are a process of rewriting. You never really know what the film is until you get into the edit room and spend some time there. I can't say, I mean, on this film, I just love shooting it. I could have shot it forever. The crew were amazing. I really enjoyed working in a very improvisational way, which I hadn't worked on before. And the Brazilian crew were very generous about a non-traditional form of working. So we wouldn't have pages or anything. We just sort of make it up as we went along, and that felt like a very. Well, we had a structure. Don't get me wrong. Of course, we had structures, and we'd spent many months talking to the kids about the structure. But still, on a day-to-day basis, it was very much a voyage of discovery on each day, and that felt very exciting. Oh, well, it's huge. I loved it. I mean, it's great, and particularly from this festival, and particularly a festival devoted to cinematography. I mean, I was blessed with Adriana Goldman, who I think is, has found a language in this film which is unusual and particular. So it does not feel like a generic film. And for that, people might get confused in the film, going, "What?" Because I do think we're trying to do, it doesn't fit into any particular genre. But I think Adriana's work in trying to find this sort of slightly elevated new way of looking at Rio was something that I enjoyed enormously.